Think about the last time you confessed to something shameful. The last time you were with someone you trusted, and you admitted something that you felt like you would have taken to your grave. Maybe it was an embarrassing incident, where you lost control of your bladder on a field trip. Or maybe it was a bit more egregious than that. Even though you're embarrassed about the story, even though it doesn't necessarily paint you in the best light, you decide to share it with your friends, in a moment of complete trust. You feel as if they understand you, that they aren't going to make you feel bad for what you are about to admit, and that they aren't going to make you feel worse about the situation. That is the kind of feeling that most police interrogators are trying to recreate within their interviews. While it would obviously be more cathartic and authentic for these men and women to go into the interview and unleash their wrath on the subject, that has been shown to lead either to false confessions or a subject claiming up, refusing to corroborate with the police because they know the evidence shows that they are responsible. Instead, it has been proven that coming into interviews with an easy tone, affable nature, and being non-judgmental to whatever crime the person has been brought in for has led to more confirmed confessions. Like in the case of Chris Watts, which we covered extensively, Chris grew to trust the interrogators, feeling as if they understood where he was coming from with his infidelity and crimes. He opened up to them because they spent the majority of their interrogation telling him how they could understand why he wouldn't want to be with Shanann, how she was overbearing, and how his line of action made sense. Did they actually believe that? No. But telling him that he was a terrible person, that he should be ashamed of himself, and that they found him to be despicable would have led to him realizing that he was the obvious suspect, and then asking for a lawyer. He needed to feel like even though the evidence was pointing to him, that the investigators still liked him. That way he would feel comfortable enough to confess. Interviewers walk a fine line, because they have to be understanding while also holding the suspect's feet to the fire. They cannot let them completely misrepresent themselves, because then they wouldn't feel any added stress in the interrogation, and probably not take it seriously. But they can't be too overly aggressive, even when they want to be. Oftentimes, we watch the interviewers fall off the tightrope they're walking, but that is not true in today's case. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Today we are going to be restarting our series reviewing the men who were caught on the show To Catch a Predator, reviewing their police interrogations and studying how they try to justify their crimes. That, in our opinion, is the most interesting part of these interviews, because each and every one of these men do not view themselves as being bad people. Sure, they sought out and engaged with the person who they believed to be a minor online, often peppering them with compliments in order to earn their trust and try to establish a sexual relationship with them. But in their minds, that loathsome series of actions is justifiable. They were simply responding the way any man would, or they weren't being serious, even though they got up the nerve to actually meet up with the child in question. Their minds reject the basic fact of what they were doing and why, because to say that you were trying to sexually exploit a minor is completely disgusting. No rational person would be able to accept that, so they explore irrational lines of logic. I was just going over to watch a game. I thought it was a role play. I didn't know. Was what I did really a crime because there was no actual child? Etc. And while these statements are made to law enforcement in order to try and justify their actions and leave without facing any real consequences, the majority of these men know that they have committed a crime, and they aren't going to argue their way out of a holding cell. John Dupree isn't smart, but he's at least self-aware enough to know that he isn't going to outwit the cops that he is talking to. With that in mind, these arguments are more or less being made in order to justify their actions to themselves. We are watching these men console themselves in real time, because they cannot accept what they have done, what they plan to do, and how the situation has panned out. As always, I will leave links to the original video in the description box down below, as this content would not be possible without the work of the Cappening channel. Channels like this one are the reason videos like this exist, and as such, I highly recommend going over and checking them out. If there is a video or subject you would like to know more about, or a case you believe deserves more attention, let me know by emailing me at dreading.official@gmail.com. We're consistently going through our email, sorting through your suggestions, and adding them to the list of topics to cover. Our ultimate goal is to cover each of your submissions, as without you, we wouldn't be able to do this. However, there are over 2,000 suggestions, so it might take some time. But with all of that said, let us begin. When Paul Westwood initially came across police radar, he was a 45-year-old soon-to-be divorcee whose life was in freefall. After the dissolution of his marriage, which he was adamant was his own decision, he moved back in with his sister and was attempting to repair their fraught relationship. He had virtually nothing going for him and spent the majority of his time online, talking to other people with the hopes of gaining some form of connection. Every day, he would log on to MySpace and send messages to strangers, telling them that if they needed anything, if they ever wanted to talk, he had an ear. But every time someone would take him up on the offer, the chats would quickly turn sexual. He would pepper the person with compliments, listening to their issues, only to of course use them in his dogged sexual pursuits. If someone was discussing how their family member had died, how they were hurting, and how they just needed someone to be there, Paul was there, ready to tell them that their loved one would want them to be happy, and of course, if they would like to see a picture of his penis. Despite his perversion being the most notable and forward thing about the 45-year-old, he described himself as a godly man, active in his community and church, and even though he was struggling at the present moment, things were bound to turn around for him, namely because of his faith. That's who Paul Westwood was on April 10th, 2007, when he stumbled across the MySpace profile for a 13-year-old who went by the username Kylie. Her profile clearly indicated that it was for a minor at multiple intervals, but despite that fact, Paul sent a friend request and messaged her quickly, writing, quote, "Hi Kylie, if you want to chat sometime, add me to instaMess, Pete_Wood11 for Yahoo, and Popeye1961 for Hotmail. See you soon," unquote. The decoy 13-year-old responded, sending her username on Yahoo, and the following day, Paul began his pursuit. Within 2 minutes of messaging the girl on Yahoo, he began plaguing her with compliments, telling her that she was beautiful, even though she was 5 years below the age of consent. He told Kylie he was just an excessively complimentary type of guy, that he enjoyed making the people around him feel good about themselves, and then started calling her sweetie, all within the first 10 minutes of their conversation. Paul was trying to gain Kylie's trust, to pursue her romantically in a way she had never been before. Because Kylie proclaimed to be in her early teens, it was likely that she'd never been in a romantic relationship before, and would have feelings of distrust and anger towards her parents. Even if she came from a great home with a functional family dynamic, her entry into adolescence would have resulted in some rebellion towards those structures, and her wanting to make her own way in the world. And that's what Paul and the majority of other predators we have covered were desperately trying to exploit. He wanted to make her feel special, but only because of his interest, so that she would become reliant on his affirmations, and more willing to do whatever he suggested. Within the first hour, Paul was asking Kylie for pictures of herself because, as he said, she was just so cute. When she politely denied his request, he offered to send her some of himself with his dogs. Great. And then told her that if they were to meet, he would bring the dogs with him. This was still all within the first hour of conversation. The decoy pushed back on Paul's messages lightly, stating that she wasn't sure she should tell him exactly where she lived, and that she didn't know him that well. After researching a bit into these stings, this is a tactic that many decoys began to use because freely giving out information, especially after the To Catch a Predator series began, made most predators nervous. If they had to weasel the information out of their potential victim, they felt as if the child was more likely to be real, and that they had, quote, earned their reward, unquote. Paul saw the decoy's hesitation and jumped on it, feigning understanding by stating that he would love to see her in real life someday, but didn't want to come across as pushy. He told her that he just wanted to hug her, but in the normal, non-sexual way, and wrote, "Maybe for now I can be your big brother or your cyber uncle. I'd like that, or anything you want me to be. I really like you, and you are pretty and very sweet." He made sure to keep the door open on the relationship developing past a platonic friend, as it was clear that sexually exploiting and abusing this minor was his ultimate goal. A link to the full correspondence will be left in the description box down below, but they continued to talk privately, and Paul even felt so bold as to leave comments publicly on her MySpace profile. He routinely brought up hugging her, telling her that he just wanted to keep her warm and protect her from the world. He placed himself in the role of her protector, that he, not her parents or guardians, was the only person who really cared for her and would be there for her no matter what. He also disparaged her father for working so much, leaving her alone to chat with him because, quote, if he really cared for her, he would be there for her. Again, he was actively trying to get this fictional 13-year-old to see her family as being bad, so he could sexually exploit her. That every time he left her alone, went out to work, or gave her any sort of space, he was telling her that he didn't want to be her father and that she was worthless. That is clearly not true, and to most adults comes across as a ludicrous assessment. But place yourself in the position of a lonely, hormonal teenager. Your body is changing in a way that you don't fully understand, and your hormones are causing your emotions to run wild. You go from happy to sad to angry in record speed, and you feel as if no one around you understands you. Maybe your parents are so divorced from their teenage years that they don't know what to do with you, and you feel like everything you do is wrong. So when someone online who has only ever been nice to you tells you that every time they leave the house to go to work, they're really just trying to leave you, you might believe them. That might feel just as rational as everything else. The conversation then turned sexual, at Paul's repeated insistence, but that wasn't enough for him. He needed to get more from the fictional child, and began to ask her to call him repeatedly. He only wanted to verify that he was talking to a minor, but turned their sexual conversations online into something a bit more real. So on the 14th, Paul gave the decoy his number and requested that she call him. This is that phone call.
Hey, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I'm used to it.
I was messing with some stuff on my dresser. I accidentally knocked like a whole bunch of stuff over, and it scared me so bad I dropped the phone.
Oh, man.
The phone even like fell apart, but I think it's okay. It's just the battery fell out.
Is it a cell phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of figured it was because most cell phones do lose their connection. I have another friend that I talk to, and I lose her connection all the time, and it frustrates the hell out of me. I keep telling her, get another cell phone, get another company, you know. She's got Singular.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
her calls get dropped all the time.
Oh, man, I'm sorry, I'm still shaky. I just wasn't expecting, like, everything to fall over.
Well, the best thing to do, honey, is just let it go, let it all go, and then just pick it up later. You know, the worst thing you can do is try to save what's falling down, and you make it worse, and then everything else. Well, I should talk because I do that a lot too. Something starts to fall, and I try to grab it, and I knock the rest of it off, and I have a bigger mess to clean up. So.
But I have it all back to set up, and it's better now.
Oh, good.
Wow.
The next couple of days, Paul repeatedly made their conversations sexual and said that they should take the next step in their budding romance. Oh, thank God. That is, to meet in person. He asked for her to go to a bowling alley in the area so they could meet in public first, before going to her family's home in order to exploit her further. When that plan didn't pan out, he sent her the following message. Okay, how about you let me try and make it up to you tomorrow? I can come down right after church, and I can leave around 1 p.m., and we can have all afternoon together. Would you let me do that for you? After some back and forth, where he insisted he could only go and see her the following day, he wrote, Okay, I think I can do this if you let me wait till 7:45 to 8 p.m. After my movie, I can come down. I'll be there around 8:30 and come to your house. And we can be together until around 11 to 12 midnight, and I can come back here and still be able to get a few hours sleep for church and a.m. Does that sound okay with you? And the following day, Paul would enter the trap house, meet Chris Hansen, and promptly be arrested by the Bowling Green Police Department. The following footage was made public by the Cappening channel on YouTube, which is linked in the description box down below. Without their upload, this video again would not be possible.
That's right there. Come see right here.
The worst thing that could have happened to Paul has just happened. Paul's predatory behavior has not only been found out, but he has now been arrested and brought in after spending the past almost 5 days preying upon who he believed to be a minor. Paul had nothing in his life going for him when he came across the Kylie profile. He was living in his sister's basement, divorced, and out of work, and likely felt that his life had amounted to nothing. He knew that other women would likely balk at the idea of being with him, seeing as he had nothing to offer in terms of a partnership, but felt as though he could impress a child. Him not having a job would probably seem cool to them, because he got to hang out all day and play online, which many kids dream of doing. He could also drive a car, even if it was a bit beaten up, which many teens and kids feel is a monumental goal, and he could eat, drink, and do whatever he wanted, without fear of being punished by his parents. To put it simply, a person who has absolutely nothing going on for them can look like a rock star to children, and that's what Paul was hoping to capitalize on. According to former FBI Special Agent John Douglas, there are some child sexual predators who purposely go after minors because they are the only dating group available to them, and aren't the same as predators who go after children because that's their preferred age range. But Paul likely was a combination of the two. He wasn't an unintelligent individual like John Dupree or Lorne Armstrong, and he knew that this police interview would likely be the end of the life he had built for himself. The majority of his familial and friendly relationships would likely be ended by this collection of choices he's made, and his only goal in this interview would be to temper the fallout. So let's see how he does.
Hi, Paul. I'm Catherine Reed. I'm an agent with the Kentucky Bureau of Investigation. This is Detective Tom Nishke with the Campbell County Police Department. And they read you your rights earlier, and you know that you're under arrest, you're in custody, you're not going home tonight. But we need to take care of some housekeeping issues first. He did go over your rights, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you understood them?
Yeah.
Can I have your home address first? How long have you lived there?
Since January, I'm rooming with my sister right now.
So is it her home?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you share the whole house, or do you live in a
No,
certain part of it?
I share the house. I sleep in the basement.
You sleep in the basement?
How Paul describes the living situation is informative because he is trying to preserve his own ego. He doesn't want to come across as being reliant on his sister, which he undoubtedly is. He moved in with her after the dissolution of his marriage and only has access to the residence because of her thoughtfulness. But he tries to frame it as being a mutually beneficial arrangement, that they both own the house and they are staying together. This illuminates perfectly how he has tried to preserve his own self-image despite preying on the most vulnerable in our society. If he so readily has an answer available as to why staying with his sister after his separation is mutually beneficial and not some form of charity that he's accepting, then he will probably have reasons as to why he's doing fine. Maybe he was just counseling the young girl because she seemed troubled. Maybe he wanted to be her protector and warn her of the dangers of talking to strange men online, and so on. These justifications are stupid and easily dismantled, but they aren't for the public. They are for him. Like the statement about Kylie's father not caring for her because he had to work, it doesn't need to hold up to scrutiny. It just needs to seem rational to him. But continuing on.
Okay. So is that where you do most of your living?
Yeah.
The majority of it? Does she come into the basement where you stay?
Yeah, she has a craft room down there.
But is it separated? Is it one just big basement? How's that
Yeah, it's
laid
separated
out?
by a door. I have a back bedroom.
Okay, so there's a wall and a door that makes it distinct from her craft room?
Yeah.
Okay. We need to get a phone number for you. And you said you've been there since January?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you said you lived in a house in Monroe?
Yeah.
Okay. Like in a subdivision, or is it? I've never been to Monroe. I couldn't tell you.
It's a subdivision in Monroe.
Okay. Is it like a one-story, two-story house, or
One-story ranch.
One-story ranch.
You got all that?
Yeah.
So we're good to go. You have an emergency contact?
Yeah, my sister.
You want to give us her name and number?
Okay.
So you no longer live at this on your
No.
driver's license?
Not since the end of '05.
Okay. Pete, you know that you're under arrest. We've already established that. And I'd like to talk to you about your situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that you have a side of your story. And I know what I've seen. I know what I've read about. I've looked at the chat logs. And you came to Highland Heights to meet someone. But if you would like to talk to me about that, I would like to hear about it. But that's completely up to you.
How the interviewer frames what he's been arrested for is important. She isn't condemning him outright for driving out to meet up with and have sex with a minor, and trying to take him to task. Although that would be the easiest way to handle him, it wouldn't result in a productive conversation. Instead, she says he came out to meet someone, which is a fairly nebulous claim. It's non-judgmental, and gives Paul some wiggle room as to how he wants to proceed. The agents working this case have more than enough evidence against Paul to charge him with intent to engage in illicit sexual conduct, so this interview isn't necessary in order to glean any further information from him. Instead, it's a way that law enforcement can better learn about these predators, and how they target kids online and why they do the things that they do. This is important work, as it can be used to safeguard children and stop predators. Making Paul feel more or less comfortable would mean that they could get an honest answer out of him, and get better information in that regard. It should be noted that pretending to empathize and understand a predator is extremely hard to do. Some of the things they say are horrific, and it would be easier to respond with anger and revolution. These detectives, and others we have covered, have an extremely difficult job.
I can fill you in.
Okay.
When I originally decided to do that, I was having second thoughts, and I had a feeling.
Paul makes a joke to try and diffuse the tension, but it doesn't work. This is a defense we have seen used by a significant amount of predators caught on these stings, so let's address it. They will say they didn't want to come, that they were having second thoughts, and felt uneasy about their decision, almost as if that alone will absolve them from any responsibility for their actions. Sure, they ultimately decided to travel however far and enter the home where they believed a minor was alone, but they want the interviewer and the public to know that they felt unsure about that decision, that they thought that things could go bad, and they could end up in prison. The fundamental issue with that line of thinking is that they feel like the date going badly is that there isn't a child at the location, when most rational adults would feel the opposite. They either can't or simply refuse to comprehend that they are dangerous to the fictional minor they are attempting to prey on, because they see themselves as a good person. In their minds, they imagine the relationship between the child and them as being mutually beneficial, even though they would be traumatizing them. What this argument also forgets is that the reason that they, quote, almost didn't come, unquote, is because they know what they're doing is wrong and against the law. You don't get a free pass to break the law because you feel somewhat guilty about doing it prior. That's nonsense.
That's because I watch too many police shows.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said when you originally decided to do that, what are we talking about?
Well, I originally decided to make the trip around 5 or 6 this evening. So I went, I ran an errand, and I talked myself out of going, went back home, and I hooked up with her again.
Online?
Yeah.
Hooked up with who?
Kylie.
Kylie.
Yeah. And I decided to, I don't know why I decided to follow through on it.
Okay.
I should have, I've never done that before.
You've never met anybody in a chat room?
Well, I've met women in chat rooms, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, I have friends in the chat rooms who are my age or a little younger, but not that young.
Not that young, being 13.
Right, or under 20.
This will become notable later, but remember this fact. Paul insists that all the female friends that he's met online in chat rooms are at least 20 years old. That is something that he asserts himself without provocation.
But they're all friends. And you know, all I've done is talk to them. I've exchanged, with a few of them, I've exchanged phone numbers, and we've been talking on and off for months. Sometimes I don't go into the chat room for a couple of days or a week because I'm busy and tired. On the weekends, sometimes I like to just relax and get on and chat with the friends of mine who are on there.
So where are you when you chat?
In my room.
At home?
Mm-hmm.
The address you gave us?
Yeah.
In the basement?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one PC, two?
One.
Okay. You have a webcam?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that you use, like a PDA or Trio, so
Just
that
the
you can stay connected? Everybody's connected these days.
Just the cam and the computer.
Okay. So is it a PC or a laptop?
PC.
And when you started, do you have, like, go through like Yahoo to chat, or what do you go through to chat? I mean, what do you go through to chat?
Well, I go on a MySpace chat room, the Ohio MySpace chat room. That's where I've been recently.
Is that where you met Kylie?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how you found her.
To tell you the truth, I'm not really sure. All I know is that I went into the Ohio chat room one night. And, somehow we just struck up a conversation, and we exchanged instant messenger IDs.
We already went over how they connected, so we know this is a lie. But again, Paul tries to frame this as a mutual conversation, that they connected not at his insistence, but because they both started talking to each other. As is the case with most of these types of stings, the decoy won't go out of their way to reach out to others. They might post on a message board or a chat room that they're looking to make friends, but they won't force people to engage with them. Paul saw her profile, saw that she was 13, and immediately gave her his contact information because he wanted to pursue her. He didn't want to mentor her or be a shoulder for her to rely on because she was going through a hard time.
I think, well, we didn't chat in private until we went into the Yahoo Instant Messenger, and then exchanged information. Gave her my name and age. She seemed okay with it. As I said, I've never chatted with anyone in their 20s.
Paul reestablishes that he never really talked to someone under their 20s, then immediately begins to rub his hand. This could be a sign of stress, because he is lying about that fact. For the majority of people, lying is uncomfortable. It's generally something that people don't like to do, and puts your body under an unreasonable amount of stress. Many people find lying to be stressful, so they have tells, like being unable to look someone in the eye or smiling when they lie. And for Paul, it seems like rubbing his hand is his.
But
this time you were okay with her being 13?
Yeah, it was just first it was regular chatting. We didn't really get put that. We didn't really get involved in special chats.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned that she was with a boy 2 years older than she was, and told me how that went.
You asked her how that went?
Mm-hmm. Off the top of my head, I don't know the specifics. All I know is, I asked her how it went and how she liked it, and what all they did together, and I just don't know what made me want to follow through on it. As I said, I left the house once and changed my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of wish I stayed with my gut feeling,
Yeah. So, what did you all talk about before you planned on coming over to visit?
What are we all talking about?
You had mentioned about special talk.
Yeah. You said that you didn't really have special chat in the beginning. What's special chat?
Paul's insistence that they didn't have a, quote, special chat in the beginning is not necessarily true, but also not technically false, and it's that technicality that likely keeps Paul's stress response from being so noticeable here. Paul wanted to have a special chat almost immediately. We know this from how he began calling the 13-year-old sweetie and announcing how he thought she was beautiful and sexy within the first hour. But the decoy didn't show any signs of interest during the first day. She accepted his compliments and said he was sweet, but she didn't show any overt signs of wanting the chat to go forward, so he backed away. He wasn't going to go farther until he felt as if she would respond positively, and that would take a bit more grooming on his part. He needed her to feel reliant on him for positive affirmations. That way, when he would eventually ask for sex, she would be scared of losing her friend and confidant.
Well, what I considered special chats is cybering.
Pretending, role playing.
Yeah.
So did you have any of those early on?
No. Just not to my knowledge.
It seems as though Paul doesn't fully remember their chats, because he adds that they didn't engage sexually early on, to his knowledge. Now, these chats would likely be the most important thing to him in the preceding days. He wasn't working, he didn't have a wife or kids to attend to, so outside of church, talking to this particular minor was the thing he looked forward to the most. So for him to forget if they did have sexual discussions early on would either indicate that she was one of the many underage girls he was talking to, or that he cared so little about their conversations that he didn't even remember what they had spoken about days later. It should also be said that they had only been talking for a couple of days before he drove to the decoy's home, meaning that any conversation they had could qualify as being early in their relationship. But in Paul's mind, because he literally didn't start their conversations with a picture of his penis and demanding that they talk sexually, he felt as though he was holding back.
Okay. What about before you came over?
I basically, when we set it back up, I basically asked her to wear a skirt. She told me when we originally decided to meet, we were going to meet at the bowling alley across the street, and she told me what she was going to wear, told her what I was going to wear.
Pausing once more, but that's not exactly accurate. Paul asked for the decoy to wear a small sundress to the bowling alley to meet him, which she denied, stating that it was raining and wouldn't provide her any sort of comfort. In response, Paul repeatedly indicated that it would be, quote, hot, unquote, if the dress got wet and was like a wet t-shirt contest. A sundress obviously is not practical for rain, and not a practical outfit for bowling. Paul was putting his own sexual desires ahead of the comfort and general well-being of the 13-year-old that he was grooming, because in his mind, she wasn't exactly a person. She was a sex object that he could control and command.
Now there was a little more conversation than that prior to determining where you were going to meet, about kissing and hugging.
Yeah, I was mentioning to her that I'm romantic, I'm compassionate, or I wouldn't mind kissing her. It's something I've never done.
It went beyond that as well.
Yeah, I don't remember what I said, to tell you the truth.
The interviewer here is being incredibly restrained with Paul. She has the chat logs. She could be explicit and tell him exactly what he said before, but she doesn't. She allows Paul to guide the conversation and lightly pushes back on him when he lies. She wants him to feel comfortable, like he isn't being judged for the objectively heinous reason he was brought in for, and by doing this, she's able to gain more information. He's extremely compliant, although he tries to shut down her questions by saying he doesn't remember exactly what was said. If you were to compare this to Chris Hansen's interviews, the difference is notable. Chris Hansen is a television reporter. His goal is entertainment over education, although both can be found within his programming. Because of that, when he talks to these predators, his ultimate goal is to make the type of content that people find exciting and cathartic. When someone denies that they did anything wrong, he reads out their words verbatim, which usually results in the predator shutting down emotionally. Though that is no doubt fun to watch, it doesn't necessarily work in terms of law enforcement.
Do you chat a lot?
Do I chat a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with women my own age or in the neighborhood.
So you have a lot of cyber chat where you role play and you talk about sex.
Yeah, with women over 25.
The minimum age of women he talks to has now gone up from 20 to 25. Again, keep this in mind. He's putting this notion forward as a way to showcase his own actions in this circumstance are not within his character. He's just a good guy who made a mistake, one that should be overlooked.
Well, let's talk about specifically what you said to her, since you don't remember.
We just need some clarification. That's all we're looking for and I think you're being honest with us, and that's all we're looking for.
Trying to be.
And
I just want to understand, where we were going with this.
I don't.
And if you can explain it for me, then it makes things. I'm cool with it. He's cool with it.
To tell you the truth, I'm not saying I've never chatted before. That's a given.
Yeah.
But as I said, I've never chatted with anyone under, I'll say 20 to be safe.
Okay.
Most of the women I meet are in their 30s and 40s, and it's just fun chat.
Well, let's.
Paul describes his internet activity as just a fun chat, which means that it is something that would never bleed out into his daily life. But that argument has no legs, especially in this scenario. Paul wasn't just role-playing online. He took necessary steps to meet people he was talking to, namely the 13-year-old girl that he thought he was expertly grooming. Had this conversation just been online, he could potentially argue that there was no intent behind it, that he was just talking, that he was never going to act on his predatory, pedophilic thoughts. But that stopped being true the moment he decided to go to the decoy's house. In past videos we have made covering these predators, there's been some upset over this fact, with certain people stating that these men were innocent victims of entrapment and did virtually nothing wrong. But let me put it in simpler terms. Let's say a person goes online and states that they're going to commit a crime. They detail their plan. They're going to wake up in the morning, get dressed, drive to get coffee, go to the gun range, then take their gun and rob a bank. They are seen waking up, getting dressed, getting coffee, going to the gun range, and then are arrested in the parking lot of the bank and are found to have a gun in their possession. They argue that they technically hadn't done anything wrong yet and should have been allowed by the police to step inside the bank to actually begin the robbery before they stepped in. Sure, that could and likely would have resulted in other innocent people getting hurt, but there was no actual indication they were going to technically follow through with their plan. Technically. That same thing is true here. If a predator stated they were going to sexually abuse their victim when they arrived at the home, then actually came into the house, it stems to reason that they were going to follow through with their actions.
So, let's talk about this real quick.
What screen name do you go by?
In Yahoo or in MySpace?
Both.
MySpace is Paul.
Paul?
Yeah, that's what my MySpace ID is.
Paul, just Paul.
Yeah. In the Yahoo chat or in the Yahoo Instant Messenger, it's Pete Wood 11, with an underscore between Pete and Wood.
This here, and this chat. That's you.
Yes.
Okay. And this is the person you were talking with?
Yes.
Kylie, Kylleelee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you recognize that?
Yeah.
And do you remember when you started chatting with Kylie?
Originally,
Yeah.
probably in 1 to 2 weeks.
Do you usually talk to somebody that long?
That
I
long?
mean, yeah, over that amount of time? 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of my friends I chat with almost every night.
So you consider her a friend?
Yeah, I guess.
Paul is nonchalant about whether or not he considered the 13-year-old that he planned to have sex with a friend, and that is likely because, as we stated, she was more of a sexual object to him. Sure, he feigned care about her interests and life, but when it came down to it, she was something for him to exploit while he was bored, which is incredibly callous of him, but it's not uncommon for predators. Predators purposely look for minors who have somewhat of a fraught home life, who feel like no one understands them and have very few adults that they can trust. They exploit their vulnerability by giving them special attention and praise, which makes the minor reliant on them for validation. This then leads to the minor being less likely to come forward about what happened to them, because they don't want to lose the one person they have grown to rely on. Paul had purposely tried to isolate the decoy away from her family, made her feel like she couldn't reliably trust them the way that she could with him, all the while being willing to disregard her after he got what he wanted from her. Again, while he has likely never considered this fact, that alone would be traumatizing for the teen and lead to even more intense feelings of depression and low self-worth.
You talk about in your chat that you're a lonely guy. What's that about?
Well,
You said you've been living with your sister since January.
Yeah.
So
Well,
bring me up to that point.
Okay, I was married in '01. Married for 4 years. We separated. She moved back in with her family. I moved to Westchester. And then I lived there for a year, and then January of this year I moved in with my sister. My wife and I were very close for 2 of the 4 years, and we started drifting apart, and we're still friends, but we decided to separate. I'm in the middle of a divorce. I'm in the middle of filing for divorce.
You filed?
Yeah. I'm going to file. I've got the paperwork already.
So you're separated, actually.
We've been separated a little over a year. But we're still friends. We still see each other.
If you're able, let me know if you believe this in a comment down below, because frankly, we do not. Everything Paul has discussed thus far, he has tried to push responsibility off of himself. We don't know why his marriage supposedly fell apart, because all he says is after 2 years of marriage, they began to become distant from each other, which is nonsensical. Had they been as close as he claimed, distance could only have occurred by one of the parties changing and no longer trusting the other, meaning that there would be a direct cause. Just as an example, let's say you're married to someone you completely trust. You've been together for years. You feel as though they are your best friend, and outside of work, you do everything together. Or at least, you think you do. One day you're cleaning up the home and you find an unfamiliar cell phone on their bedside table. You think it might be a friend's, so you open it up and try and assess who it belongs to. But immediately you find evidence that it's your partner's, and they've been cheating on you for years. Within the phone, you find various numbers of the people they've been sleeping with, text messages talking about sex, and even some hurtful messages talking about how you are unfulfilling. You, of course, are heartbroken, because you realize that the person you fell in love with, the person you built a life with, doesn't actually exist. They were a facade carefully crafted in order to make you fall in love with them, so they could look like the perfect partner. That is the kind of instance that would cause distance in a relationship. But Paul flaccidly recounts that 2 years into the marriage, something randomly changed. They stopped being close, and they separated over a year ago. He also maintains that he has the paperwork ready to finalize the divorce, but for some reason has not filed it. Based on what he's been arrested for, it's not hard to imagine that his wife found something about Paul that she couldn't get past. Maybe she found inappropriate searches on their computer regarding children. Maybe she found chat logs of him talking to other young girls. Or maybe he asked her to roleplay in a way she found disgusting. But in Paul's assessment, something nebulous changed, something that he was unaware of, and that's how he got here.
Sounds like you're in between relationships.
Basically.
Okay. Specifically, you talked to Kylie about, and you say special chat with you here on the phone while we're both alone. I'd love us to make each other feel good because I'm lonely tonight. Where were you going with
Well,
that?
basically a romantic chat.
Okay. Do you recall having this conversation?
Not word for word, but yes.
Okay, tell me about it.
I just suggested that we could get together and cuddle on the couch, watch movies or watch TV. I've told her on a few occasions that that I am kind of lonely and I don't have many friends. That's why I go into the chat rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Paul is unsettlingly calm when recounting how he asked who he believed to be a 13-year-old girl to engage with him in, quote, romantic chats, where he told her that he wanted to cuddle her on a couch. It seems, at least to him, that he believes that this action isn't that bad, and therefore has no issue plainly discussing it. This is obviously alarming. How a sexual predator like Paul sees the world is patently different than the way you or I do. When we hear of a stranger asking a minor to come over, cuddle with them on a couch, and watch a movie, we understand what they are really asking. We recognize that they are trying to set up a sexual scenario, because we all have at some point or another cuddled a romantic interest on a couch. But because the request isn't specific, because they aren't directly discussing the sexual acts that they want to do, they feel the request is technically okay, that it's just friendly, and that if anyone makes a big deal out of it, then they are not being fair to them.
And I thought we could keep each other company.
You think you would have wanted more?
I don't know.
I mean, you're lonely, I understand. And a lot of things are on your mind: divorce, separation. Those are natural feelings. Okay? I understand. Do you think once you got up here, cuddling and being together, watching movies, do you think there could have been a point where possibly it could have went further?
Well, I would try to draw the line at cuddling.
This passive denial is alarming, but at the very least, it's honest. We've seen this before with other predators we have covered when they are asked the same question. They all maintain that if a child wasn't present, that if they seemed interested in the adult man, they would have stopped themselves from engaging sexually with them. But there is absolutely no evidence that that would have occurred. Again, if a person has already gone through the steps of communicating sexually with a person that they know to be a minor, then discussing meeting up with them and acquiring the child's address, then traveling whatever distance to the child's house, then of course entering the home, and began to engage with the child in a semi-flirtatious way, the way all of the men caught in these stings have been, there is no evidence they would have stopped themselves. Every choice they have made up until this point has been deliberate, so they've had multiple chances to stop what they're doing, but they didn't. This limp and flaccid denial is likely not for the interviewers, but for himself. He doesn't want to see himself as a sexual predator, as a deviant, as a ne'er-do-well, as a debaucherous wretch, because that would mean that he isn't a good person.
In your chat, you specifically told her that you'd like to have oral sex.
So probably would have went a little bit further.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And you graphically talked about how you would do that in her breasts. You talked about staying the night. You talked about her being sexy in her nightgown. That you'd be rubbing her thighs, massaging and kissing her breasts. And then you talked to her about if she had ever gone down on a guy, the guy that she had been with. And then you talk about that this aroused you, that you were ready to masturbate, to ejaculate from the conversation. So you did expect to have something happen when you went to the house?
Yeah, but I don't know what would have happened. I would have just played it by ear.
But your intention was to have sex tonight, or oral sex.
If it went that far, yeah.
Okay.
Do Did you bring anything with you? Anything special with you? Bring any movies or anything with you tonight?
No. Just that bag of pop.
Okay, bag of pop. Was that for you, or did she mention you need to bring that, or?
No, it was for me.
Okay.
So are you going to stay the night?
No, it wasn't.
No.
No, I had made my mind up to not stay the night.
Okay. What made you change your mind about that? In the chat, you indicated that you would spend the night.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about it coming down here, and I'm actively involved in my church, and I have obligations to them.
So that would have made the difference. You could have came down here and had sex with her, but as long as you didn't stay the night.
Again, the interviewer is doing an outstanding job of keeping her tone even and non-judgmental. She reads out some of the things that he said, goes over his plans for the night, and then asks him a clarifying question, which he willingly answers. Again, Paul denies that he would have stayed the night, and then tries to use the fact that he had church the following morning as proof of that fact. Throughout the chat logs, Paul used his position in the church as a sort of signifier that he was a good person. He was a holy man who was active in his church, so the fictional 13-year-old should trust him when he asked what she was wearing. He was just looking out for her after all. He also brought up his church-going ways multiple times in this interview, again to set him apart from the other men they had talked to this night. It seems that he believes that if they knew that he goes to church, they will understand that he's a good guy, who maybe made a mistake, but otherwise should be given a warning. But he is unaware that officers who deal with sexual predators are accustomed to them using positions of authority and influence to sexually exploit minors. Being active in a church, volunteering to coach a kid's sports team, and working in childcare are all ways that predators seek out their victims. Obviously, not every single person working in these industries are doing that, but sexual predators will see these jobs as a way to give them access to more victims and pursue it wholeheartedly.
It was okay.
Well, I wasn't planning to spend the night because I had plans for tomorrow anyway.
To go to church?
Mm-hmm.
Was there any on your computer? I know you chat a lot, and you said nobody under 20. If that was ever looked at, would there be anybody else around the age of 13, 14 on there that you chatted with? If somebody looked at it?
There's a few around 15.
Okay. And have you?
Paul genuinely believed up until this moment that he was going to be let go with no issue, that they were believing everything he had said thus far, and just let him go with a warning and a pat on the back. But the moment the second interviewer asks if they were going to find any more inappropriate chats with minors, he buckles. He had stated for nearly 30 minutes at this point that the decoy was the only person under the age of 20 that he had talked to, that this was out of his character, and he never approached or even considered talking to someone below the legal age of consent before. Because he didn't think they would check, he told obvious lies repeatedly and with conviction, simply because he believed they would believe a good, upstanding citizen like himself, and never actually look for themselves. And because the two interviewers had been so plain with him, he immediately confesses that they will find more chats with minors. It's also pertinent to point out that this is why these stings are done. Every time we have covered these sting operations, a significant portion of people in the comment section will voice their moral outrage, claiming that most of the men caught were entrapped by police, that they didn't want or mean to talk to a minor, and since no one was really hurt, they didn't do anything wrong. But to be clear, by the time predators like Paul get up the courage to go and meet a child in their own home, they have likely sexually exploited multiple others. Paul was asking the decoy for photos of herself so he could masturbate. He was trying to sow discord in her personal life so she would be more pliable to his manipulations, and that is not the actions of a one-time offender. He was talking and hurting other minors, but because those minors didn't come forward, likely out of shame, people will overlook them.
You ever tried to meet them?
No.
How long ago was that?
How long ago did I meet him?
Yeah, how long?
At least a year.
Okay. And what'd you guys talk about?
Just normal stuff, sports, school, activities.
Did you get into a little bit of the cyber too?
Not with most of them.
But you did with some of
With
them.
some, it was the same type of talk that you had here with Kylie. I think it's all split.
Basically the same, yeah.
Okay. On your computer, at your place there, there isn't any type of pictures of minors or anything on there, is there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. We've seen this kind of denial in past videos, and we've established that it always means yes. If someone is asked a direct and frankly insulting question like this, and their answer is anything less than an adamant denial, that usually indicates they're leaving the door open for the possibility that they do have access to it, but under some extraordinary circumstances in which they aren't aware of it. By saying not that I am aware of, instead of just no, Paul is putting forward that there is a way, somehow, that someone could have placed child sex abuse material onto his computer without him knowing. That even though he already established that he's the only one who goes onto his own computer in his sister's home, that someone could have broken in, placed the abuse material onto his computer and then left, in order to set him up. He is also attempting to state that ownership of that material is out of his character, even though he is currently in the interrogation room after being caught trying to sexually abuse a minor that he was talking to online. After his arrest, a search of his sister's home and his computer revealed that he did in fact own child sex abuse materials, so the statement makes sense.
Do you visit any type of, fairly legal or anything like that? Underage, any type of websites or anything like that that you're aware of?
No.
Okay, so nothing like that would be on there.
And Paul's tell is back. He knows that if he isn't released tonight, if they could pursue this case more than this interview, they will find his biggest secret and shame. He knows that if that happens, the life he has made for himself is over, and he's trying his best to come across as relaxed about that fact. But he simply can't help but comfort himself, rubbing his hand like a fly in shit.
Let's see.
What about, you said you had a webcam. Have you ever exchanged any explicit photographs or any pictures of you masturbating or while you're cybering? Have
No.
a more interactive situation where you can see them and they can see you?
Not with minors.
But it may be on your computer.
I'm not sure. I understand.
Photographs of you through the web.
Oh, it might be. I don't know. All I know about that webcam is that it's just a live feed. It doesn't save any still pictures.
Okay.
But have you exposed yourself? I mean, genitalia or anything?
Not
like
to
that?
minors.
Okay, not to minors. Okay.
No.
Have you ever sent any pornographic pictures to other adults?
To other adults, yeah.
Yeah.
The other friends of mine.
Okay. Are these men, women?
It's women.
Okay. So you term them as friends?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What sets them aside from someone who you may be interested in having a relationship, or are you interested in all at any given time?
I am interested in one specifically for a potential relationship. She lives in Oklahoma, and we basically talk every night. Not online, but we talk every night. We've chatted on her nights off.
Mm-hmm. Now, in this particular chat with Kylie, there you referred to another person that you were chatting with. Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, she's 19.
Pausing once more, but it's now become obvious that he didn't believe that the interviewers would actually read the chat logs, and he hoped that they would just take his word for what was in them. After spending the majority of the interview stating that he would have never talked to anyone below the legal age of consent, and that all the chat logs he had were with women over the age of 20, they now bring up that he admitted to talking to a 19-year-old in the chat logs. 19 is over the legal age of consent, obviously, and though it's still uncomfortable, it's perfectly legal. But Paul has failed to jump over the hurdle that he set up. He thought he was so charismatic, so charming and likable, that when he said something that was provably false, that they would just agree with him, that they would disregard the direct evidence that he created and overlook his search history in his attempt to engage sexually with minors, and then say, he's just a good guy.
Her name is Brenda.
Is that her screen name, or is that her name that she's
Well, I
given
believe
you?
it's her name, because
Okay.
she also uses it as her screen name.
Just Brenda?
Mm-hmm.
No numbers or...
No.
And that's the 19-year-old you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. From Oklahoma?
No, that one is a 47-year-old.
Okay.
So you don't discriminate as far as how old or young they are?
No.
I'm going to be right back. I'll step off for a second. I'll
Yeah.
be right back.
Is there a chance I can get a glass of water?
Yeah, I'll take care of that for you in a few minutes. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just wanting to know what's going to happen from here.
Well, at this point, we're going to write up your citation, and we're going to get you transported to the local jail, and then they'll process you there, and then you'll have an arraignment, and they'll set your bail. I don't know, that it may be Monday before that happens or later. So you're going to be spending the night at least.
So will I be able to, well, the two main questions I have is, am I going to be able to attend church tomorrow? And am I going to be able to go back to work on Monday?
You're not going to be going to church tomorrow.
Okay, I can live with that.
I don't know about work. That's going to depend on when you're arraigned and when your bail's set. So I can't make any promises on that.
Okay.
That's an unknown right now.
Again, it seems like Paul truly believed he was going to be able to walk out of the interview and just go home, that they would find him so likable and straightforward that they wouldn't pursue charges against him. This actually is not uncommon with criminals who are interviewed in this fashion. Former FBI Special Agent John Douglas has stated in several of the serial killer interviews that he's done over the years have led to the killers themselves believing that he is on their side, that he will put in a good word for them when they go up for parole, and that they finally have met someone who sees the world through their lens. This, of course, is not true, but by providing a non-judgmental approach to these predators, the interviewers were able to get more accurate information from Paul and leave him feeling as if he could leave at any moment. Because he felt understood, he openly admitted to talking to more minors, engaging sexually with them, and potentially owning child sex abuse materials, all the while still believing he'd be able to leave before morning.
One of my most important questions. I know I did something wrong. Okay, I admit that.
You admit that you came to see a 13-year-old and have sex with them.
Yeah. And I feel bad about it. I can't explain it, but I know I did something wrong. And what I'm driving at is my sister going to be notified about this?
Not unless you tell her.
Though Paul stated that the living arrangement he had set up with his sister was somehow mutually beneficial, here we can clearly see it is not. He doesn't want his sister to know that he was arrested for trying to sexually exploit a minor, because he knows that would immediately result in him being kicked out of the home.
Okay, so you have no reason to bring my sister into this
Now,
situation?
we'd like to take a look at your computer if you wanted to give us consent to do that.
Does it have to be at the residence, or can I bring it somewhere for you guys to do what you
you're
want
going to be in jail. So, we would have to be able to get access to that computer. You know, are you the only one that uses the computer? Or does your sister
No,
use it as well?
that computer is mine. She has her own.
And it's in your room?
Yeah.
On the basement level of the house? And you say she has a computer?
She has her own laptop that she uses.
A laptop?
Yeah.
And where does she keep it?
On the main floor. Either in her office or out in the living room.
Okay.
What I was driving at is, it seems that she is going to find out, because if you have to have access to the computer, you have to go to the residence to do it.
Right. Well, there's different ways to deal with this, and I mean, if you want to cooperate, you know, and give us consent to look at your computer, you know, we'll gladly take your consent to do so.
I'm trying to kind of build my life back again. You know, I know this is a big setback.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be tough for you, but you're doing the right thing. I mean, you're facing it head on, and you know that's the way to deal with things.
What I'm wanting not to do is have to explain any of this to my sister. I'm not trying to keep anything from her, but I'm trying to turn my life around. I'm trying to recuperate from my divorce and get on my feet financially and otherwise.
Why are you fearful for your sister to find out?
Well, I'm trying to, you know, I'm getting back into church, and she and I are bonding now, and we never did bond before. You know, we had a hard life, and I think I'm going to lose her love and her trust if she finds out what I did and why I did it. That's kind of why I was.
You know,
Pausing once again, but keeping the crime away from his sister would likely also lose her love and trust, but Paul doesn't see it like that. It's obvious at this point that he is a deeply selfish person. He doesn't see himself as a predator, because sexually exploiting minors makes him feel good. He doesn't care about how it makes the child feel, or how his manipulations would affect them later in life. That doesn't matter, because it's not happening to him. He doesn't care how his arrest may affect his sister, because inevitably, a search warrant is going to be conducted on her home. Her neighbors, friends, and everyone she knows is going to know that the police showed up at her residence, looking for child sex abuse material, all because she allowed her brother to live with her. Her friends with children are no longer going to trust her. Her community is likely going to shun her, and her reputation as she knows it will be destroyed. But that doesn't matter, because Paul doesn't care. He's not concerned for how she will see him in the future, or how this will affect their relationship. He's scared that he won't have a place to live, and that's it.
I can't promise you that she's not going to find out. You know, that's a part of you having to deal with moving forward and dealing with that. I can't promise you.
Yeah, but like Agent Rita said early on, there's two routes you can come in here. You can sit here and tell us nothing and just be hardcore, or you can take the route you've taken and say, okay, I made a mistake. I can only go up now. And that's what you're doing. You're taking, you know, you're being open about it. And that's, to me, that means a lot. And you know, you're heading straight forward. You're being upfront with us, and that's, you know, a lot of times we don't get that. That speaks volumes for you. Okay. And I know you're active in the church, and I know you want to get your life around. And it sounds like some of it's worked for you. Because I mean, you got in here and said this or that. But like Agent Reed says, we can't tell you that it's not, your sister's not going to know.
I mean, she's obviously going to find out when you don't come home that something's up.
Well,
she's going to have questions for you.
She's busy this weekend. She's not expected home until sometime tomorrow afternoon.
This is a telling statement, because just like when the child decoy states that their parents are going out for the weekend or night, it seems that Paul waited to visit the decoy until his sister was out of the way. He didn't want to come up with an excuse as to why he was leaving the home for the night, so he simply decided to wait until she was away to prey on a minor.
But
Do you have any kids? Did I miss that earlier? No. So you don't have any children. Does she?
no.
So, go ahead.
Well, as I said, she won't be scheduled home until tomorrow afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, there's probably no way that she will not find out. I just don't know how I'm going to explain it.
Yeah.
I can tell her I was arrested, and if she asks what for, I'm going to have to tell her the truth. I don't want to lie to my
That's
sister.
your call. That's your call, and you're going to have time to think about it before she gets back. How you're going to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have a cell phone or anything with you when you came?
No, I don't have a cell phone.
So you don't own a cell phone at all?
No.
And your PC down in the basement with you, that's the only PC. Is there another PC in the house? Or?
The other one's my sister's, but this is the only one I use.
Okay.
I don't.
So there's a laptop that she keeps upstairs.
She keeps upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay.
I only use my PC.
Now, is there a separate entrance to the basement that you use, or do you?
No, it goes upstairs into the kitchen.
So you have to come in where to get to your
I
room?
come in through the garage.
Through the garage?
Into the kitchen and make a turn and go right downstairs.
Okay. Well, I guess the biggest thing is, I guess regarding to consent, so which way you're on, so we kind of know which way to go with you. I mean, if you feel like you want to consent regarding, checking everything out, verifying everything, she has a form. It's up to you if you want to sign it or not. If you do, she'll have you sign it. If you want to consent to have your computer and stuff checked out. If you don't, but that's up to you.
Mm-hmm. Is it gonna hurt my case if I refuse the consent?
No, it's your right.
It's your call.
It's your call.
I mean, consent. If
I'm
you want to say no, it's not going to change what we've talked about here.
Mm-hmm.
You've told me the truth. I'm cool with that. If you tell me no, I just take that blank paper back out the door. Or if you tell me yes, we'll sit here and we'll fill it out. You'll get to read it. You'll know exactly what it says, and everybody will feel good about it, and we'll have consent to look at the computer. I mean, that's your call.
I think I'm going to refuse the consent.
Okay. That's all it comes about.
See, we're not tough guys. We just, and girls, we just want to find out what happened and, go easy. Nobody's been mean to you or rude that I know of. So, not that this is a good experience for you, but I hope that you can.
I've learned it.
You can build off of it.
Yeah.
Adrian, I'll be stepping out. If you need anything, just let me know.
Okay, I'll be out in a few minutes.
At this point, the interview ends. Like we said, while Westwood was in jail, a search warrant was served on his sister's home, which resulted in child sex abuse material being found on his personal computer. This resulted in a 3-year prison sentence. While in prison, he was charged with the federal count of traveling with the intent to engage in illicit sexual conduct, and was given another 51 months in prison. He was also given a 20-year term of supervised release, and made to register as a sex offender. If you have made it to this portion of the video, thank you for watching. Viewers like you are the reason this channel is able to exist, and we greatly appreciate the support. If there's a video you would like to see on the channel, or a case you would like to bring more attention to, let me know by emailing me at dreading.official@gmail.com. We're constantly going through the inbox and adding new cases to the list. And if you like this video and want to see more content, comment and subscribe. So with all of that said, remember, stay safe.